All right,
Without further ado,
let's bring up
John Youker!
Woo!
Microphone stand. T-Rex in a kilt, the Toxic Avenger, and a Gemini. Yeesh. Let's follow that up. Yep. So, hello. Winter's stayed around longer than we'd originally planned, and I think we all know why. Last weekend, of course, Jesus came out of the tomb and saw his shadow, which means 6 more weeks of winter. It was written in the scriptures. It's in, I think, 2 Matthew. It's right after the Beatitudes. Jesus says, lo, when I return out of from the dead, should I see my shadow, yea, the winter months shall last for 80 more days, and yea, shall they complain, though they are used to the weather. There's also something about loving your neighbor and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I've noticed how it's like we had a little tease there of spring, like, yay, we're going to make it. And then all of a sudden, it was kind of like the old cop show Columbo, if you remember that. Like, he'd be there, he'd be questioning, and then he'd walk away, and then he'd come back and be like, hold on a second. You know, or like an argument. Like, you'd get angry at someone, and you'd think you're done with the argument, and then all of a sudden the person just comes back and tries to make another point because they want to get the last word in. Like, just one more thing! That's winter this year. So hopefully spring, we'll get some spring before summer, and we don't just have to leap right from death-defying wind chill to mosquitoes. I just hope so. So, now we begin the bulk of the act. Thank you. Many years ago, in California, there was a young man. This young man believed in many things, but the thing he believed in the most, he wanted to be a chef. This young man wanted to be a chef more than anything else. Oh, sure, he had dabbled in many other things. Voodoo, accounting, even professional sports. But being a chef was the thing that really made him feel good. So he tried to apply to culinary school. He couldn't get into any of those really good ones. You know the ones I'm talking about, the ones that produce those great American and foreign chefs like Wolfgang Puck or Bobby Flay or that one guy. No, he had to go to Santa Barbara downstairs culinary college. It was not the most beautiful culinary school. No, it was in a basement of a disused bingo hall. The whole thing was kind of shady. They didn't have any overhead vents for any of the ovens, and the place could use a good mopping. And the head chef, their teacher, who was named Phil, he was missing 2 fingers on his left hand, and he didn't dress like a chef. He looked more like Mel from Alice. And the young man wasn't sure because the rest of his classmates, well, that's just it. He had no other classmates. It was just him. It was just him and Mel. And Mel, well, that was just it. He called him Mel even though his name was Phil, and that became just their conversation every day. He said, I'm here, Mel, and he said, my name is Phil. And then they would laugh. And then he'd have to scrub all the pots and pans before they could start. And yet, despite this, Phil was actually really good. He was a good chef. But he had this obsession with deep frying everything. Deep frying vegetables, deep frying meat, deep fried stuff. Stuff that had already been deep fried, re-deep frying it. Deep frying cheese, deep frying liquid cheese, solid cheese, deep frying soft drinks, which I didn't know was possible. And this went on for 2 years, Until finally our hero graduated from Santa Barbara Downstairs Culinary College with a degree in culinary education, Bachelor of Science. There were no electives for him to get anything else. No Bachelor of Arts available. And so he moved northward to the Bay Area, San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, Santa Clara, Mountain View, Palo Alto, Stanford, to find a job, because that's where you go when you want a culinary job, the Bay Area. And he hit the streets. He walked, he looked. He tried to find work in any restaurant that would have him. But the problem was, his skills were pretty one-dimensional. He could deep fry stuff. He could cover it in cheese. That was about it. So some of the fine dining establishments wouldn't have him in there. The fine French dining establishments wouldn't have him. Your fine Chinese restaurants wouldn't have him. Your Asian fusions, your raw food restaurants, your Jack in the Boxes, nobody would have him. Despondent, crazed, not sure what to do. He did what many desperate people in that time do when they're desperate for money. We've all been there. Poorly educated, we're not sure what to do. You think to yourself, well, what else can I do? He swallowed his pride, and he applied at 7-Eleven. Don't judge him. We've all been there, like I said. He wore that hat, he wore that name tag, he wore that weird shirt. He told people about the big gulps. He told people about the hot dogs on the roller grill. And he served there at 7-Eleven for many years. And then the years turned into longer years. And then one day when he's doing the overnight shift, a delivery came. Which is strange because normally they don't get deliveries. Deliveries of a new super dip. It was an experimental Casablanca dip. And he brought it in and he looked at it. And he wasn't so sure about it. He thought there was something wrong. And he said to the vendor, I don't know what the deal is with this. It doesn't look right. It's bubbling weird and I don't like the sound of it. And the vendor just scoffed at him because that's what vendors do. And our hero looked at this and wasn't sure. But he knew he had to the queso. And so he went and he found the best possible chip to dip into queso. Old Dutch ruffled. Most people don't know this. It's scientifically proven. And as he went to go to the queso, his co-worker, Alfonso, was a pothead. He went to Stanford. He studied to get his PhD in communications. Threw a banana peel on the floor. It's ironic, isn't it? He goes out in the most comedic way possible. And our hero stepped on the banana peel and slipped. And he fell. He tried to stop himself, but he couldn't. And he did a half gainer forward that would make any Olympian happy, and he fell. He fell into that queso. He fell into that experimental queso. And that hot, bubbly cheese seeped into his pores. It seeped into every pore in his being, and he struggled. He struggled to get to the top. He tried to breathe, but he accidentally breathed the queso into his lungs. And it just fortified and just affected him. And Alphonse grabbed a mop and put it in there and helped pull him out. Are you all right, man? He said. Our hero couldn't talk. He didn't know what to do. He was on the floor in the fetal position. Just trying to think, his mind was racing. And he went to the eye wash and he washed out his eyes and he went out to the car wash and he ran through the car wash a couple times, but he didn't know what to do. And then he went into the men's room and he looked in the mirror. He didn't look human anymore. His hair had become spiked with frosted tips. He'd grown a goatee, but the goatee was not the same color as his hair. He'd suddenly gained 20 pounds along his waist. He had tattoos. Tattoos that weren't ink. The very skin had changed its color, the very pigment of his skin. The shirt he was wearing, his uniform, had changed into a Hawaiian shirt. He felt something weird on the back of his head, and it was a pair of sunglasses. He looked in the mirror. He looked in the mirror, and then he punched the mirror violently and ran. He ran, and he heard a clopping sound. He wasn't wearing his sneakers anymore, his work-approved Skechers sneakers. He was wearing flip-flops. And he ran, and Alphonse screamed, "Wait, man, are you okay?" But Alphonse couldn't finish the sentence as he recoiled in horror at what he saw. Our hero ran. He ran through the night confused, shocked, scared, every emotion you could think of. As he ran, it began to rain. It thundered and lightened, and it ran as he ran. He ran and ran and ran. He didn't know what to do. He ran across the bridge from San Francisco to Oakland. He was frightened. He was like a rabid beast. He was an animal. Finally, he made his way into an alley, and he crouched down, unsure what to do. What do I do now? As he looked at all of the rings that suddenly showed up on his fingers, and the Rolex watch that seemed to form directly out of his own body. "What's happening to me?" he said. "What's going..." As he noticed the hookah shell necklace coming out of his neck. I don't know what's going on. He stopped being able to control the volume of his voice. He wanted to speak in a whisper because of the panic, but he couldn't. Suffering from PTSD? Unsure what to do? He went into the Catholic church across the street. He tried to yell out "sanctuary," but instead out came the word "garlic." As you can imagine, the priest on duty was very confused by this. Son? Son, are you okay?" "Garlic! Garlic! Johnny Garlic!" "My son, what do you mean by this garlic? Who is Johnny? Are you Johnny Garlic, my son?" "Flavortown!" "Are you okay, my son? Do you wish me to call a doctor or something?" Before the priest could finish, he ran out of the cathedral, shunned by God himself. Continuing on, not so much running now because he knew he was doomed, because he'd noticed his khaki pants were now cargo shorts. He slept under a park bench near the Golden Gate Bridge. He realized now he'd circled back almost. He'd barely noticed. He sat as earrings started to form in his lobes. And he wondered, a submarine sandwich would be really good right now. So he walked into a local sub shop that he managed to see. And he walked in, and everybody gasped at this hellish Lovecraftian creature that had just walked into the room. And he walked up, and he asked for whatever the locals wanted, whatever the locals liked, because that's the good stuff. And so they made him a sandwich with pastrami that was actually vegan pastrami. It was actually made with tofu and various flavorings and cheese and lettuce, and he ate it, and he began narrating how it tasted and what the flavors were like on his tongue, and everyone just stared at him going, who the hell is he talking to? Why is he doing this? And should we call the police? And they did, but he was gone once the cops got there. And reports started coming in from all over the city of a mysterious man with frosted tips and a goatee and sunglasses on the back of his head instead of over his eyes. cargo shorts and a Hawaiian shirt, coming into restaurants, ordering something, narrating about the flavor of the food to no one in particular, and then leaving without paying. He became known as the Dine and Dash Bandit. A special unit was formed in the San Francisco Police Department in the hopes of catching the Dine and Dash Bandit. The man who was once in charge of the Zodiac Killer Squad was called out of retirement to try to catch him. His success was sadly the same as it had been to catch the Zodiac. Realizing, though, that the heat was on, before, of course, the aforementioned detective decided to give up the case, our frosted, garlicky, gassy hero decided that he needed to leave California. So he hitchhiked across the country. He hitchhiked, stopping at truck stops, cafes, and greasy spoons along the way, trying not to speak of the food that he was eating, but sometimes he just couldn't help himself. One time at a biker bar in Omaha, Nebraska, he almost got knifed for talking about the chicken wings, because the bikers thought he was talking about them and how luscious their legs were. Finally, he got to New York City, the Big Apple, Manhattan, the place where dreams supposedly come true sometimes if you can afford the rent. Or if you go to Brooklyn, now that it's generified and you're not going to get stabbed. Not old Brooklyn, back when Brooklyn was Brooklyn. The Brooklyn that produced LL Cool J and, you know, where you couldn't understand what people were saying even though they were speaking in English. And I don't mean because they were speaking a foreign language, I mean their accent was just thick. You know, Brooklyn, real, back when the Dodgers used to play there, Brooklyn. But I'm off track. Back on track here, John. Get back on track. You're talking about our hero here. Or is he an anti-hero now? Yes, he's an anti-hero now. Our little mismatched goatee, frosted tip, Hawaiian shirt wearing cargo short. Man, he's in New York now. And he's at it again. The Dine and Dash Bandit is at loose in New York City. Calls are made between the NYPD and the San Francisco PD. Files are exchanged. Calls are made. The FBI is called in. A task force is created at the FBI. A team of people similar to what you would see on Criminal Minds on CBS is put together. Profilers are put together. And their profile is completely wrong. They think it's some skinny teenage boy doing this, wearing a disguise. Ha! They don't know the truth. They don't know that sometimes madness just takes a little push, or slipping on a banana peel into a tub of toxic nacho cheese, or queso. Sometimes it just takes a careless stoner and a banana peel. Anyway, our hero, anti-hero, begins to have his picture circulated amongst the various tours and foodies of the city. Because that's what New Yorkers do. They look out for each other when they're not looking out for each other. And pretty soon he can't get in anywhere. They know him. They know they can't serve this guy in any way, shape, or form. Because he's going to creep out the other customers talking about how crispy the pie crust is, or how wonderful and warm the soup is, or how great the clams are, even though there are no clams in the soup. Once again, destitute, alone, wandering the streets. He comes across a building. On the front of that building, there's a logo. That logo reads, Food Network. Something clicks in his brain. He doesn't know what it is. It's sort of like the click that happens when two lionesses are out on the Serengeti and they see that one gazelle that's limping. They know. That's the one. That same thing clicks in his head, and he just walks into the building. Initially, the woman at the front desk is getting ready to call security. But it just so happens at that very moment, up on the 10th floor of the Food Network building, I assume it's not really called the Food Network building, but I'm calling it the Food Network building because I don't know what it's really called. There's a board meeting going on. There's a board meeting going on with Food Network executives. And they're saying, ladies and gentlemen, we're in a bit of a bind. Emeril Lagasse tried to do a sitcom. I don't know who thought that would be a good idea, but we just fired them. We need someone to replace Emeril Lagasse. Does anyone have any idea how we're going to do that? And of course, there's the usual muttering and harumphing that goes on in board meetings. No one knows what to do. And then they hear a scrumbling of security. And they ask what's going on. And they hear, well, sir, there's this weird person down in the lobby. He sang Flavor Town and Garlic, and he says he wants to eat food and talk about it. And it's at that moment that Leonard, the 105-year-old executive who had been working in television since it was first invented, back in the 1930s when television screens were about yay big and were only in a few homes, Leonard said, "Bring that man up here." And everybody thought, the man's off his rocker. He's finally lost it. There's a crazy homeless guy out in our lobby screaming about Garlic and Flavor Town, and he wants to bring him into this boardroom. But they figure he was right about those Japanese game show chefs. Let's give this guy a chance. So our hero is brought upstairs to the boardroom with security, of course, on both sides. And they take a look at him. Despite the fact that he hasn't shaved in months, he still only has the goatee on his face. The frosted tips are impeccable, despite having not been to a salon in all that time. The sunglasses have not moved an inch from the back of his head. Clothes smelling wonderful, despite not having been laundered or removed from his body in that time. Has not showered in months, still smells like a rose. They look at him and they say, "Son, what's your name?" Here's the conundrum. One of the effects of falling into the toxic queso dip is our hero forgot his name. He can't remember his past. It's like he did not exist prior to falling into that vat of cheese. It's gone. He just doesn't know. He said, "Sir, to be honest, I can't remember. I'm just some guy." Guy. Just call me Guy, sir. All right then, Guy. Guy what? He was stuck again. What was his last name? What last name goes good with Guy? Guy Lombardo? Guy Incognito? Fietti? Fietti? Did you say Fietti? Yeah, Fietti. Yeah. I said Fietti. Guy Fietti. All right, Guy Fietti. You think that you can handle television food? Yes, I can, sir. Yes. What are your qualifications? I can describe food while eating it. Well, show us what you have, son. So they brought in a plate of onion rings and a steak. A steak that had been marinated in a wonderful mushroom sauce. And he proceeded to eat it, and he described it in glowing, wonderful terms. It was like a Hallmark card written by Shakespeare. It was the best he'd ever done. And they were gobsmacked. And Leonard, old 105-year-old Leonard back there, sitting on his little scooter, was going, "What'd I tell you? What did I tell you?" And so they thought about it. They had him do a few more dishes, a couple soups, a pizza. And so a plan was hatched. This mysterious homeless man who made up his name on the spot, created in a chemical vat of queso dip, who had a physical pair of sunglasses growing out of the back of his head that could not be detached, whose frosted tip spiked hair could very well be growing out of his very skull, who probably has bones inside of them, was going to be their replacement for Emma Lagasse. Now, they knew they couldn't just have him come out there. They couldn't just plaster him out there. That would be too much of a shock for people. They had to eat. It's like when you just jump into a cold lake. They couldn't do that to their viewers. They had to ease him in. So they created a program called the Next Food Network Star. And what they would do is they would introduce a whole bunch of other people along with Guy, and then what they would do is gradually over the weeks they would get people used to him. Sort of like if you remember the episode of Black Dynamite where they revealed that Michael Jackson was actually an alien. And the way he looked at the end of his life was his true nature, and he just changed his disguise over the years. It was like that. You were getting used to Guy Fieri, so that when it was revealed at the end that he was the winner, America was used to him. He was no longer a crazed genetic mutant coming into restaurants randomly to eat food. He was now a bona fide television chef. So, even though he could no longer remember his dream of becoming a famous chef from his previous life, he had achieved it. And sometimes, yes, he remembered his old life at Santa Barbara Downstairs Culinary College. He remembered Phil, who looked like Mel from Alice. Sometimes he remembered Alphonse, the stoner who threw that infamous demonic banana peel that changed his life forever. Sometimes he had those flashes. Sometimes he remembered the Catholic priest. Sometimes he remembered those. But really, who he was before doesn't matter. What matters is who he is now. He's Guy Fieri now, and he always will be. See, he's like the Joker. Only there is no Batman to stop him. At least not until I finish my jiu-jitsu course. Thank you for coming to Die Laughing and watching. Please continue to donate. That's my time. Good night.
All right, let's keep it going for John Youker, everybody. Keep it going.
Yes. All right, John, I need you to do me a favor.
Yep.
Go get drunk as fast as you can,
Right.
and then
Do
come
it.
back out here.